Hey, everybody. I am here with the man, NL Cy Young Award winner, and one of my favorite pitchers to watch in baseball, Corbin Burns. What is up, Mr. Burns?
Not much. I appreciate you having me on.
Sorry for that buildup, but literally. so this is no joke. Like, you are one of my favorite pitchers to watch. Maybe my favorite because you combine a whole bunch of stuff. Like, you're a power pitcher. Your stuff moves wicked. You also have crazy command, and you have the prettiest pitch in baseball, your backdoor cutter. I know we've talked about this. What do you think about that? Like, is it awkward having PitchingNinja like worship your stuff?
No, not at all. No, I'm just glad that there's people out there enjoying it, as much as I am when I'm up there on the mound. It's fun for me. The last 2 years have been really fun. Obviously, coming off 19 was not fun at all. So, it's fun out there. That's what I take pride in now, is going out and being prepared. So I'm gonna get on the mound, it's just have fun, and it's cool when other people appreciate it.
Did you ever, like, growing up, did you think you would be in this spot? Like, when I say reigning NL Cy Young Award winner, was that something you dreamed of? And is it like surreal sometimes to find yourself being called that?
It's definitely surreal. Growing up, I always wanted to play in the big leagues. Always wanted to be, the all-star, the Cy Young, but never really believed that I really, could do it. For me, getting to the big leagues was the dream come true. Obviously, the more I worked at it and the more I was able to refine some of the stuff I had, the more and more it became this reality that I could be a top of the, top-notch pitcher. So it's definitely surreal. The little kid in me is definitely excited that, hey, first all-star, Cy Young, that kind of thing. So it's definitely cool.
When did you think, like growing up, when was the big league dream like realistic for you?
I think it became realistic when I was invited to go play in the Cape Cod in college. Coming out of high school, wasn't a highly scouted kid. Really only had one D1 offer to play college, so that wasn't the kind of the top of the list thing at that point. It was more about going to school and getting the education. So it wasn't until that I kind of had the good sophomore season and was invited to go play in the Cape was kind of when it started to be like, hey, we're starting to get some scouts talking to me. Playing pro ball is now becoming a reality. So now let's set the sights as high as we can.
Now, obviously, playing in the Cape is prestigious. Like, what clicked for you? Was it like mechanics, strength and conditioning? What was like bumped it? Like, what was your key?
I think it was a combination of everything. I didn't really start pitching until my senior year of high school. I was hurt my junior year, so I didn't get to pitch. So that was kind of the first year that I was going to, devote baseball to pitching. So I really didn't get to pitch exclusively till my senior year of high school. So just getting into college, I was still new to pitching. I was in the past, it was like, hey, as a kid, you pitched, the inning in, all stars, whatever. But, I was a middle infielder. I played shortstop. I loved to hit. So it wasn't until like my high school coach was like, hey, you're probably not going to make it professionally as a shortstop. You don't move well enough. You're pretty slow. You don't hit real well. So I was like, hey, if you want to do anything, you got to pitch. So that was kind of when I started pitching. Then I got into college. I got bigger, got stronger, learned how to get in the weight room, started to really dig into the pitching mechanics. And then just from there, it kind of just slowly built up to now where we're at.
So mechanically, like, what was the big key for you? Is it something that in your head clicked, or was it like a progression of stuff?
It was a progression of stuff to get to the big leagues. And then prior to 2020 is kind of when everything clicked for me as far as mechanically. I don't have the traditional windup and traditional set position and arm stroke that most guys do. So that's kind of something that was kind of always tinkering with in 19. And then 2020 was actually during all the COVID, stoppage that we had, that was kind of when throwing in the backyard, throwing into a net. It's kind of when I kind of shored up that arm circle, the set position, ditched the windup. And that's kind of when everything started to feel natural.
So it was really just throwing by yourself, kind of figuring out the feel for your mechanics, figuring out what felt good for you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for me, it was what can I do it the most efficiently to get the arm at the throwing position that I wanted to be? When can I get the arm up, get the hand basically behind the baseball? How can I do it and get that quickly? So my wife would film from behind me in the backyard or from the side of the backyard, throwing off my turf mound. And Slowly they just kind of shored some things up. So when I came back into our summer camp that we had prior to 2020, it was full go.
The one thing I love, and you describing it coming off the 2019 season, I think you said, look, I don't have to just change everything I'm doing. My slider plays real well. I know how to spin a ball. It's just changing my pitch mix and some other things. Like you used analytics to give you confidence, basically. Like it wasn't a matter of just overhauling everything you did. It was a matter of doing the things you would do better and maybe finding pitches that worked with what you had. How big a deal is that? Number one, knowing who you are as a pitcher, and number two, the mental aspects of being a pitcher.
Yeah, definitely. After 2019, like you said, the easy thing for me to have done would have been, hey, let's just work on, the four-seam fastball location. Let's throw the slide a little more. Let's throw the curveball a little more, just to see if those tweaks kind of help out. But for me, it wasn't until getting beat up in 19 that I realized what kind of pitcher that I was. I got through 18 as a reliever, throwing a four-seam fastball and a slider. That was really it. I was the new guy in the league. No one knew about me. Just kind of, skated by. 19, it wasn't going to work with a four-seam and a slider, and we got beat up all year. So for me, it was, yeah, we can take the easy approach, work on some location, work on the, spinning the four-seam better. But for me, it's when I really learned that, hey, I can spin the ball really well. The slider's a good pitch. How can we use some pitches off the slider? And for me, I always had a little bit of natural cut on the four seam that I was always trying to straighten out. And at that point, it was like, you know what? Screw trying to straighten it out. Let's just let this thing cut. Let's let it ride. So that's where the cutter came about. Kind of tweaked my cutter or my curveball grid to make it feel more like a slider to get the better curveball action. And from there, it was, hey, these are the pitches that I'm going to pitch with my cutter, my slider, and my curveball. The sinker was a work in progress. The changeup was a work in progress. But now the more that I throw in, the more I've got a better feel of what I'm doing with my hand. And then, like you said, the mental part of it was huge. It was, hey, I can still pitch at this level. Yes, I just got beat up. I'm making all these tweaks. Now I feel a lot better on the mound. I feel like I know what I'm doing. I have a better feel of my pitches. So the mentality was going to be there. It was more about just getting enough repetition to know that, hey, the pitchers are there. And then 2020 was the perfect little shortened, 60-game sprint season to kind of test it all out, and it worked. So we just continued to run with it.
Yeah, that is a great point, because I think that little sprint season really shored things up. Like, as far as my appreciation for your pitching, it was obvious that year that you were at a whole nother level. Like, you were a ton of fun to watch that season as well. So you use that for your advantage. Like, you took what you had during that little season and didn't use it as like, hey, this sucks, hey, there's no fans or anything. You worked on stuff to really take your game to another level. Yeah,
absolutely. That was kind of the first time that, hey, we're going to throw this cutter a lot. I think we threw it at maybe 30% of the time. So it wasn't a ton compared to what we did last year, but I was like, hey, this cutter, we're going to rely on it. I still wanted to throw the sinker to have a traditional, looking fastball. But the more I threw the cutter toward the end of 2020 is like, hey, if we go into 2021 and we can command this thing like I know I can, like, this is going to be basically the fastball that we're going to use to set up other pitches. And the more we used it, the more we talked to the analytics department, the more it was like, hey, this is going to be a good pitch that's going to play up. And the more I threw it, the more it played up.
Had you always had that command? Because it's not usual for a dude that has your stuff with your arsenal, like a very diverse arsenal, to have insane command. Has that always been there, or did that, like when you were a kid in high school or whatever, were you a command guy and just the velo came later, or did this just dial in over time?
I'd always been able to throw strikes. I'd always been able to be in the strike zone. I think there's a difference between command and control. I think a lot of guys in the league can probably go up there and throw a strike every time, but in the big leagues, you're going to get hit. So for me, it was really trying to dial in on getting the cutter to the corners, getting the curveball at the bottom of the zone, getting the slider where we wanted to. So that was a process that, took a while of getting a feel of getting those visuals, getting a feeling out of the hand. But yeah, I was always able to throw strikes, but it wasn't until I think getting the solid repetition in the backyard prior to the COVID season of, hey, I was throwing maybe a couple hundred balls in the net a day, just working on stuff, working on the field, working on the cutter. So I think that time alone, getting to do that by myself, in the backyard, getting the feel of things, really took it to the next level.
Are you a guy that kind of runs hot, or are you more chill on the bump? Or are you like a low heartbeat guy, or are you like, ready to take someone's head off?
So all through college, all through minor leagues, first year in the big leagues, I was, the blood was pumping. We were hot. Whenever something was, any out, we were pumped up about it. That was part of what I worked on post 19, is trying not to have these really, the real big ups and downs. So that was kind of the main focus of, hey, let's just prepare so we can go out and have fun. If there's a big situation, you get a big out and that emotion comes out, great, run with it, let it roll. But for me, for the most part, I'm trying to be, calm, cool, collected, act like you've been there before type of thing, all the sayings you've heard. But that was something I definitely had to work on.
What was the key to working on that? Like, do you have to, I mean, I guess some people do things like they meditate, they have a mantra that they go through to clear their head. What type of things would help a pitcher that does tend to run hot and pitches on emotion, which is a way to pitch? I mean, you can definitely do that if that's you, but a lot of guys are successful with the slower heartbeat, especially a command guy. What type of things did you work on to improve that?
Yeah, so for me, it started off with a lot of, like you said, a lot of meditation, breathing techniques, a lot of stuff to keep your focus and your mind on the task at hand, not the environment around you. Some guys, really rely on the environment, the adrenaline around them to get the energy going, to get that focus. For me, I try to tone all that out, and for me, it's focusing on what I'm trying to do at the mound. By doing that, it helps me kind of stay under control, keep the blood pressure down. But yeah, a lot of it has to do with what we're doing off the field, focusing techniques, meditation, breathing, visualization is a big thing of, visualizing those big outs being made, visualizing the pitch that's being made, so that when you're on the mound, you've seen it, you've done it, you've been there before. When you're preparing for a game, is it something like, are there hitters that you will pitch around, or are you just attacking kind of everybody? You have a pretty good idea of what people's, cold and hot zones are, stuff like that. Like, how do you go about navigating a lineup? Yeah, I'm going out and attacking everyone. I've got a plan for everyone up there. Most guys, I have 2 to 3 to 4 sequences that I will go to get a guy out, that I know I can get a guy out. If we don't have the feel of a curveball or a slider or changeup, whatever it may be, we have those other avenues we can go to get outs. Obviously, there comes situations in the game that, second and third, 2 outs, you got a base open with, the 3 or 4 hitter up, and you're going to kind of throw around them and really try to nitpick. But for the most part, yeah, I've got a pretty good plan. I've watched a lot of video, done a lot of homework. Most guys I'm going to tag and have a couple ways to get guys out.
Are there any guys that you like dread coming up? Like, is there somebody that has your number that you're sitting to go, oh crap?
I get this question a lot, and it's perfect because the guy that always had my number ever since I got called up has been Buster Posey. No matter what I did, curveball, 0-2, I would buckle him with 0-1 curveball, and then I'd throw it again and he'd get a hit. He was the guy that I just couldn't get out. We'd get 2 strikes and he'd get a knock. He was just the perfect veteran AB, and it was great news when he was retiring.
So you probably like sent him a cake or something when he retired, right? like there you go. What's it like being around? Like, I don't know what it is. Like, the Brewers pitching staff is freaking ridiculous. Attacks people so many different ways. You have guys with, I mentioned, like, your cutter is the prettiest pitch in baseball as far as I'm concerned. And it is one of those pitches that if you're a baseball fan and you understand pitching, it is art. But you also have a guy like, I'm wearing my Airbender shirt. You have a guy like Devin Williams who throws one of the most ridiculous pitches probably in the history of baseball, his changeup. And then you have Hader, who comes at you with all these different arm angles. Woodruff, who's just a boss, a beast, beats you with his fastball. Freddie, who's electric. You've got a lot of what's that like? And then you have, guys like Suter, who's just borderline crazy.
I think we just have a group of guys that really understand what they do as a pitcher. Like you say, Devin knows he's got a really good changeup. So, he's been working, I think, this offseason of trying to get some stuff to complement the changeup. Hader's Hater's Hater. He can probably come up with a new pitch on the spot and get you out with it. That's just the kind of pitcher Hater is. But like you say, Woody's got a good fastball, can, knows how to throw a good 4-seamer, 2-seamer, can really use it at the top of the zone. Freddie got unbelievable extension. So his 94, 95 is looking like 100, 101. So you just have this group of guys that really know what they're doing on the mound. And obviously, that was the thing last year is we had this friendly competition. Everyone asked, like, what do you guys do? What do you guys do? It's like, yeah, we're always talking to each other. We're always trying to, pick up little things here and there, whether it's sequencing, it's a, pitch thought, whatever it may be. Everyone's trying to use each other's ideas to get better. So it's a really close, brotherhood of guys sharing ideas, pushing each other to be the best we can. And it just comes down to knowing what we're, up there trying to do on the mound.
Is there any pitcher that you grew up idolizing? Because I don't know, I'm trying to think of pitch arsenals, and it's tough to think of a comp with you just with the variety of ways you attack folks. Is there someone that you said, this is the guy I want to be, either growing up or even currently, that there's somebody that you said, or a Hall of Famer that you sat there watching on, wow, how did they do that?
Yeah, I watched a lot of guys growing up. I grew up an Angels fan. So personally, whenever Jared Weaver pitched, I watched him. I loved that the type of mentality he had on the mound. This nasty coming at you with all of, in his peak, 86, 87. By the time he was done, it was softer than that, but you wouldn't know it based on this big guy on the mound attacking, coming at you. So I like that mentality aspect of it. You'll watch a lot of videos of Nolan Ryan. Obviously, everyone wanted to throw hard back when I was a kid. So I was like, hey, who had the best fastball? Who threw the hardest? So I watched a lot of tape on him. And obviously, when I started to throw the cutter, I started watching, the Mariano Rivera, just how he would, the locations he would throw it, where he would throw it on the zone. So those were a couple of guys that, I've watched video of and kind of watched growing up.
Yeah, that's interesting because Mariano is a guy who I would say, yeah, he has a pretty good cutter, but I don't know that he threw it as much backdoor as you do. Like that pitch seems very unique to you. I've seen like Halliday do it some, but it is a really, really unique pitch, and one that, again, I think it's an acquired taste. I think if you understand pitching and you understand baseball, you're like, oh my God. I talked to Tristan McKenzie and he said, Corbin Burns's cutter is the number one pitch that I would love to throw. And it's awesome to hear that from other dudes in the league. Like, you're their idol when it comes to pitching to a large extent. But you're very chill about it. Like, it doesn't ever go to your head, which seems awesome.
Yeah. And I'm out there just trying to pitch and make a living like all those guys are. So, I've talked to a lot of guys like, hey, how do you throw the cutter? How do you do this? And like, to be honest with you, it's just kind of the way the arm works and kind of how I throw it. But yeah, there's guys, we all watch on the TV what's going on, and who's going around the league, who's having good years, that kind of thing. So it's one of those things that's always easy to keep track and on how other guys are doing.
Yeah, it's funny because I would compare, there are guys that I will sit there and watch every single pitch they throw, and you're one of them. DeGrom is obviously one too. Very different though, because he simplified everything, and that his arsenal is basically glove side fastball, slider off it, stuff like that, where he perfects it. You throw everything, and it's in some ways tougher to command them all, I would imagine. But it makes for better PitchingNinja gifts throwing a lot of pitches, though. I mean, I could throw throw it down the middle. They all go different ways and stuff, but it's a very different mentality. And like, it shows there are multiple ways to get things done, I think, at the big league level.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you say, all these different pitches and it's hard to command them. For me, I'm really only throwing two different pitches. I simplify things as I have a very similar feel, obviously the cutter and slider, but even how I throw my curveball, the grips are just slightly, there's just some slight differences in them. And it's just more about the mentality of how I'm throwing it. So that's kind of one pitch I throw, and it's got three different shapes. Then I've got the sinker and the changeup that for me are a similar pitch with just, two different shapes, two different speeds. So for me, yes, it's maybe five different pitches coming at you, but for me personally, it's only two different pitches that have just different shapes to them.
Now, I've thrown out a lot of stuff about your cutter, but statistically, your curveball is insane. Like people just don't hit it. Do you think that's because the curveball is that good, or it works so well with your other pitches that if they're looking for anything else, they're not going to be able to hit your curveball? Or is it a combination?
I think it's a combination of both. I'm able to spin the curveball really well. And one of the things I do good as a pitcher is spin the ball. But it's also the fact that how we use it, the way we disguise it, I think makes it, that much better than it actually is. But yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of both those factors.
You're one of the strange dudes too, who are able to throw nasty stuff arm side and nasty stuff glove side. So you have pitches that break, your changeup is underrated as far as I'm concerned too. I mean, you're throwing like 92, 93 mile an hour changeups that just disappear. And then your sinker cutter mix, if you have a hitter, like I've tried to show that about why the backdoor cutter is so dangerous, is if you throw that with your sinker out of the same tunnel, you're going to miss that sinker two seamer by a ton if you're guessing cutter. Is that and I talked to Devin about this a little bit too, because he's obviously extremely good at pronating. It's right. A little tougher thing to do to cut. Is there a key to doing that, or is it just a natural way that your mechanics or wrists move or whatever?
I think it's just natural with how my arm works, my hand kind of works. I fought for years trying to throw that good, perfect four seam, getting the fingers behind the ball. And you see, like the DeGrom's a good example, or Freddie Peralta, guys that get good behind the ball and can spin it really well. I've always been able to spin the ball really well. It's just not straight over the top like a lot of those guys can do. So when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to be that good four seam behind, kind of guy, that I realized hey, my hand just naturally works on that side of the ball. So that's why it kind of came to me when everyone's like, hey, the slider's good. The slider's good. So the more I kind of threw the slider, the cutter came about actually by trying to throw two separate sliders. And so that's kind of how this cutter started. It was like, my hand works on the side of the baseball. I don't know how, if it's my arm stroke or just my wrist is a little turned something funky. I don't know what it is, but that's just how it comes out. So for me, throwing the cutter is natural. And so for me, it's the sinker. The way, if you slow down the sinker, my hand is still on the side of the ball. We just really work hard after to get it to spin the other and go the other direction. So that's why, Omar hates it back there. Sometimes I throw a sinker and it's going to cut like the cutter. It's just sometimes, I'll grab a seam a funky direction and it goes. But when I'm able to get both of them going opposite directions and they're both coming, mid to upper 90s, it's definitely going to create this big separation that definitely helps the sinker look even better than it actually is.
Did anyone tell you to try, how coaches are? They're like, there was a time where everybody's looking at getting 100% spin efficiency. So your balls, has that natural kind of fights gravity or rise to it. Mm-hmm. Were there people that tried to say, hey, you may want to get, work on getting behind the ball? Or was that you trying to do that? And then you realize that screw it. Like I'm this guy. And as a matter of fact, being different is good. Like having that cut is good.
That's definitely something that, we tried in 18 and 19 was on the four seam fastball. Is like, hey, yeah, your spin rates are through the roof, but it's just like, you're almost throwing like gyro balls up there. Like, what are you doing with your hand? Like, why, try to really get behind it. So now when I throw bullpens and stuff, some guys like I think Freddie's a big guy with, getting the hand behind it. Obviously with the extension and the good rise to his fastball. But for me, that's not even something that's we don't even really talk about anymore, just because we know like, hey, yep, that ball's cutting, or hey, that ball went away from the cutter. So it's at least creating some sort of separation. So that's just kind of something that I do differently at bullpens that other guys might be like, hey, I'm really looking for that good access. I know Josh Lindblom was a guy last year was big on, he, I think, posted videos and all kinds of stuff about how he was getting this, 98%, 99% spin accuracy, the spin axis on it. So there's guys that are definitely using the TrackMan and the Rapsodo to work on that good spin efficiency to get that good rise to it.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that especially when that first came out, there were coaches and players that thought 100% means good. Like in school, you get 100%. It's like, awesome, I got an A+. But in pitching, it's not necessarily like it has to work with everything else you have. And you can get too lost in hitting those numbers, I think, without understanding who you are and how your other pitches complement that.
Yeah, absolutely. The other side of it is you're looking at the, guys are spinning fastballs at, whatever, 3,000 RPMs. But then you look at the guys that are sinker ballers and like, dude, you're only spinning at like 1,200 RPM. It's like, well, yeah, that's the other end of the spectrum that everyone thinks it might be really bad, but in turn, it's really good. You look at like the Adrian Hausers, who had the best sinker in baseball last year. Like, yeah, he's not going to get a ton of spin on his fastball, but it's because he's got good sinkers. So there's just two different ways to look at it and different sides to just kind of try to strive toward.
Yeah, I mean, he's got wicked stuff too. Obviously, watching him, yeah, that's nasty. Well, let's touch on some pitch grips. You got a bunch, so I'll let you go through them, and I'm not gonna direct this.
No, so they're pretty simple as far as I'm concerned. So first is, let's see if we get here. This is the cutter grip. I mean, it looks like a 4-seam fastball, but that's the cutter. Everyone's dying to see it, but when I tell people, I just say, hey, it's a 4-seam fastball. I grip it and I'm chucking it. It's all about
like, it's kind of like I asked, you ask Devin what his changeup grip is, and he'll show you the 4-seam circle change. And it's like, it's the release that matters. How is your hand coming through it? What do you see? Like, do you use Edgertronic cameras and stuff? What do you think is happening when the ball's coming off your hand?
I've looked at it on Edgertronic, and it sometimes will look more sliderish coming out the hand. Sometimes it even looks like I'm getting behind it and it's still cutting. So it kind of really depends on the day. Some days I'm throwing it with just, a little baby cut, and it might be a little bit harder because I'm getting behind it a little better. So it's got a little bit more rise to it. In the middle of the season, I guess middle toward the end of the season, it was probably the weeks leading up to the no-hitter where talking to Omar is like it looks like a 98-mile-an-hour slider. Like it had depth and a lot of action to it. So obviously it's not spinning as directly behind as it was early in the season. So it's one of those pitches that the week leading up to my start, 3 or 4 days leading up, it's kind of like, hey, what's the cutter looking like this week? Is it going to be more of a rise cutter going away, or is it going to be more of the sliderish angle? So it just kind of depends on how the arms are working. But the grip stays the same. It looks like a 4-seam fastball. When you slow it down, most of the time the hand is going to be, I guess it'll look more like that coming through. It's going to be slightly on the side. Some days it's more directly behind it where I can get the more rise cut to it. So it just kind of depends. It's kind of a different look, whatever, different points of the season.
So you're feeling it's mostly hand position is causing the spin axis kind of change versus actually you don't feel it come off a finger differently. You're not feeling it like it's coming off both fingers. You feel like at the same time.
Yep. I'm trying to throw it the same off of both fingers, just with the slight, when I'm coming through on the side of it. So if I know if it's coming off both fingers at the same time, it's going to get this, side axis coming to it. Yeah.
Oh, it's funny because like you talk to Kenley Jansen or Mariano, and they would say kind of the same thing, like about their cutters. Like I just woke up one day and my pitch was cutting, and like that's their story. Like you can't. It just they're trying to throw fastballs and the ball cuts out of their hand, and that's just life, which is a fantastic, fantastic thing, a fantastic pitch to have walk into your life like that.
Yeah. It's just when I just quit trying to throw this straight 4-seam and just said, let's just throw it hard and see what happens. And you got this cut. So now, there's some days, some pitches that you try to manipulate it, and then that's when it sucks. So it's like, okay, let's just so in my mind, it's like, hey, it's a 4-seam fastball, and it's got some cut to it.
When you're throwing it backdoor, is there a spot that you're aiming at? Are you like intentional? You're throwing it like at the chalk of the batter's box? What are you trying to do with it, and how did you perfect that pitch so that it is just art?
Yeah, so that's going to be a pitch that kind of depends on the count. When we're 0-0 and a lefty stands in there and we're just going to take a strike, it's more kind of just starting it just off the black so that it runs onto the plate. So we know we're for sure getting that strike call. A lot of umpires don't like to call it the first time. If the first time I throw the backdoor cutter is an 0-2 to a lefty, I'd say probably close to 90% of the time they're going to ball it first until they've seen it. So we try to give them that look early in the game to a lefty of, hey, you see this now, you see it back there. We're going to throw one on the plate so you see it. So now the first time we try to go backdoor for the punch out, that you're going to call it. And then, 2 strikes, it's depending on the day. Sometimes I'm starting at chalk line. If it's in the stretch that it's basically a big slider, it might be starting a little bit farther out there and bringing it back. So it just kind of depends on the count, depends on the time of the year, what the ball's doing. But yeah, there's a lot of factors, but I know obviously in the bullpen coming into the game, what that starting point is going to be.
What I find interesting is what you said about umpires, because I can see that. Like the first time they're like, well, this is a mistake. It looked like it was going to be a ball, so it probably stayed out there. I'm not going to call it. Then when they realize you're doing it, now you have the reputation. Like I think going into a game, they're like, this is what he does. And I think maybe you'll get those earlier because it is, a pitch that you have to recognize as an umpire too. But I can see that it's a tough pitch to call because you're used to fastballs. Same reason why hitters don't swing at it is they're used to fastballs running away from them. And instead this one's coming back to the plate, and it's just odd. It's kind of it's a cool thing, but it's an acquired taste.
Yeah, it's almost just like the first time a left-handed hitter sees on it, they just give up on it. It's starting at the chalk. Okay, it's a ball, and then it comes back. So same kind of thing with the umpires. Like Omar has a lot of homework back there behind the plate of, hey, when you shake this guy's hand, make sure he knows that we're going to throw a backdoor cutter. Make sure I really need you to stay with this one here. Like stay on it, stay with it. Like watch it in a warm-up pitch so you can see it, so that it doesn't take until the second inning of a left-hander getting in there that we get the call.
Now with robo umps, if that ever happens, you don't have to worry about that. But what is your thought on that, by the way, real quick?
I don't know. I've heard a lot of mixed reports on it. Obviously, there's been some minor league teams and independent ball teams that have used it, and I mean, it's still technology. It's still going to have bad days. It's still going to have the days all of a sudden the curveball bounces in the dirt and it bounces up and catches the bottom of the zone. Is they going to register it as a strike? So it's still technology. Everyone's like, oh, it's going to be 100% accurate, and that's not true. It's still technology. But as far as like a hitter's aspect, I've talked to hitters, and hitters are kind of iffy on it. It's one of those things that if a guy has a really good 12-6 curveball and he can dot the very bottom of the zone, it's going to bounce almost on the plate and it's going to be a strike, where an umpire isn't going to call that. Just like, the crappy backed up sliders that catch that top corner of a zone to right-handers that are caught, like this because they're supposed to be down and away. Like those are strikes. Those are, as a hitter's mind, it's not even close to the zone. So, but then you've got the other side of it, the cutters that I throw that are just off the black, they get called that the hitter can see and go, that's a ball, and the umpire calls those strikes. So there's two sides of it. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but there's definitely a lot of ins and outs that people don't really think of.
Yeah, I just talked to Chris Bassett. He said if they have ever robo ump, I'm just going to kill people with my movement. Like I'm going to throw these wicked curveballs that are just barely clipping the zone, or sinkers that are barely clipping the zone, and it's going to look terrible. Like catchers are going to be diving for pitches and stuff. But it's going to make it like a blitz ball tournaments where you have a little thing back there and you're trying to hit clip. Right. Yeah. And I'd imagine that'd be a lot of what they'd see with you too. Like there'd be pitches that would clip the zone that would be just disgusting.
Yeah. So there's two sides of it, and you got to be careful what you wish for, that kind of thing. Cause it might end up turning like that, or they might have a perfect system where maybe it doesn't have all that. So who knows?
Yeah, they do need people back there, obviously, for bounced pitches and stuff like that, because it might end up in the zone, and somebody has to overrule that. And you have catchers that are trying to, instead of framing or setting up, they may set up inside and deliberately want the pitch outside and stuff. So it may a whole different level of gamesmanship. It could be really screwed up. So, all right, let's go to some more pitches.
All right. So next we'll just go right to the slider. So for me, I go basically, I take my cutter grip, which is basically just the four seam fastball, and just turn it a little bit more, and then just put the fingers together. And that's it. So a lot of people will throw their curveballs this way, or even guys will throw cutters this way. And it's just a little bit, basically a quarter turn of the ball, and then put the fingers together. And again, the way it just sits in my hand, I just try to throw it hard. And by throwing it hard with the fingers together, and the way it comes more off of this middle finger more than anything. Personally, I'm thinking about throwing it with the pointer finger, because that for me helps me get over the top of it a little more. But yeah, it's very similar to the way I throw my cutter. It's just the grip, and then we're throwing it hard, and it just creates this basically a bigger cutter based off, the cutter that I throw.
And it's the seam, maybe, like, I guess unintentionally, you're not intentionally using the seam because you're throwing it off your pointer finger, but the seam is forcing the pitch to have that rotation while your pointer finger is causing some downward rotation.
Yeah. I'm not trying to, manipulate the hand to the side of it to really get the spin the way I want it to. Like I say, for me, it's a similar mind thought of how I throw the cutter. So cutter here, it just kind of comes off the fingers this way at the same time. Now it's a slider, and I'm throwing with the same hand, but the way the hand comes through, it just kind of comes off like that, and then it's coming off the pointer last.
Do you visualize that? You can visualize right now. If I asked you to visualize your cutter and visualize your slider, you could do it, right? And do you do that before the pitch too, to help like subconsciously make it move?
I do before the pitch. I have about a 20-25 minute meditation right before I head out on the field that is just straight visualization of every pitch. Whether it's just an 0-0 cutter for a strike, it's an 0-2 backdoor cutter, 0-2 slider in the dirt, 0-0 backdoor curveball. Like I visualize every single pitch before the game, so I've seen it all. And then when I get the sign, it's okay. 0-2 slider in the dirt, and I can see what I'm going to do. Then it's come set, and then you're just trying to, as long as mechanically we do what we want, we get the arm up, like the pitch is going to do what we want it to do.
When you're visualizing, are you navigating the lineup, or are you visualizing just without a hitter up there, just what the pitches look like?
Usually just what the pitch is looking like. Occasionally if there's a guy that, we need to do something different that we don't normally do, which there's very few in the league. Usually it's just visualizing this pitch to a righty, this pitch to a lefty.
Gotcha. Okay, let's go curveball.
Yeah, we just go right. So this is the kind of the third grade pitch that I kind of think. And so basically we go from the cutter to the slider to all we do now is it's just the same hand grip. We just rotate to the other side of the horseshoe. Gotcha. And so for me, this is the only pitch that I will tweak the hand a little bit. Everything else, the hand is, for me, what I feel is behind it. Obviously, looking from the back side of it, it's going to be off this side of hair. This is the only pitch that I will just basically preset my wrist as I come out of the glove, just a slight turn. That's the only thing. I mean, it's from here to here. Like that, it's just that little bit. And now it's just, again, throwing it the same way. Throwing it, and now the way with the hand is slightly turned coming through the zone, it just kind of rolls off this finger that way. But
gotcha.
Fingers are the same, hand placement's the same. All we do is just turn from the slider on this side to just turn the horseshoe to be on the other side.
Interesting. So what was the thought of just turning it? Like, is that just a feel for you that it makes you feel like, because you probably could throw the slider with the curveball with the same orientation as your slider, but I don't know if that resets your head. If it does it make the seams position themselves better for the curveball? What's the reason for switching it?
It would probably almost be better for the curveball if I stayed on that seam, because I have a longer seam on this middle finger. But I did it to mind and feel a different pitch, even though it's the same pitch.
That makes sense.
So for me, it's like, hey, this is a slider. If I try to throw a slider like this, and now he calls a curveball, it's like, well, I kind of want it to be sliderish. So now the pitches blend together. So for me, it's like, no, if you're throwing a slider, this is your slider grip. You're throwing a curveball, this is your curveball grip. Even though fingers the same, hands almost identical. It's just, I'm crazy in the head, so that's the way it works.
No, that makes a ton of sense though, because what I've heard from pitchers, and it makes sense, is that your pitches tend to blend together if you don't change it a little bit. You end up throwing, just one pitch that isn't even that good after a while because they all blended together. You have to have distinct pitches if you're going to throw these distinct pitches. And your way of separating them is just changing the orientation of the ball, which makes sense. Let's go to some arm side moving stuff.
Yep. So basically I'll just go from, so here's how we throw the cutter. So all we do now is we're just rotating the ball slightly to get in between the two seams. So again, I will take fingers a little bit closer together. Cutter, they're a little bit apart, and then sinker, I'll put them pretty much together. And again, the hand orientation is going to be the same. It's the same angle. Now, just as we're coming through, I had to really think to stay on it and get good extension with this pointer finger so that we can get the ball to go the other direction. And then also just by the spin axis it goes on, even though it's spinning almost the same as the cutter, the way that the drag grabs on the seams helps it to go back the other direction. But same hand, almost same fingers, width, and same hand, distinct, orientation. It's just how we kind of finish a little bit through it helps it get the arm side run.
Gotcha. So it's just how it comes off your fingers at the end. Is that a conscious thing, or is that something that you can feel it? Like it's conscious,
yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's like I think Logan Webb told me that when he throws his sinker slow, it cuts, which is kind of interesting. Like I never thought of it, but it's a gyro-y thing.
Yeah, I think if I just tossed with my sinker grip, it would probably cut.
Yeah, that's interesting. Changeup, and how did you like this changeup? Is are you going to throw this more at any point? Like, I don't want you to not throw your cutter all the time, but your changeup is freaking is sick, and I don't think people understand how good it is.
So the changeup is a pitch I have worked on a lot this offseason. That's about all I'll give you as far as how much I'm going to throw it. But yeah, the changeup is a pitch that I've always struggled with, just like you say, because of the way my hand works. It always cut. I could never get it to go the other direction. So I've done every changeup grip and thing that you can think of dating back to 2018. 2018, I actually threw a splitter. It wasn't a change. It was a straight split. Had some success with it. 2019, we moved it into a split change, kind of like I think Gosman throws a changeup similar to this.
Yep.
And didn't have any success with it. So that started 2020 when I had all the time in the backyard. It was going back to basically just similar to a circle change. I throw it off the two seams just because it's kind of how I thought my sinker, and I want it to look like that. And just I've learned that the more I play catch with it, the better it gets. I can kind of start to manipulate it a little bit now to kind of get, if it's I just throw it normal and kind of get a small little fade. When I get to two strikes, I can kind of manipulate a little more to get more the fade in action, kind of like how Devin has his. His is more power turbo changeup, but it's just one of those things. It's a really, really tough field pitch for me, just because it goes the other direction of the way I normally throw. So when I throw it off the two seam, and again, it's coming out. My hand is angled the same way as it is with the cutter, a slider, the sinker. It's the same. And so when I throw it, it's more kind of trying to get the good extension, just like I do with the sinker. So the sinker, I'm really trying to get this pointer finger through. On this changeup, it's more really trying to get the middle finger to roll off the side of it. So I try to get some pronation to it. My hand doesn't really work that way. So that's why some days it comes out of the hand, it's really good. Some days it's cutting. So just kind of depends on the day, but I've gotten a lot better feel with it the last couple of years and into this off season of a better idea of what it's doing.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just a matter of thinking to yourself, because your hand naturally will pronate at some point, right? Like as you fall through it, if you stay on it, if you stay through it longer, sometimes it will, without even thinking pronation, it's gonna naturally have that movement.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and it's always been hard too. That's why it was like I always threw a changeup in college, didn't throw it much. Then when I got into the big leagues, it was like, hey, it's hard anyway, so let's try the split. Let's try the split change. And so I've just never been able to really take speed off it. So now I've just kind of embraced it and say, hey, some days I'm gonna throw a changeup that's 94 almost. So it's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like watching your manner on the mound doesn't look like a guy who is going to just incinerate people with velocity. And you do, like you throw freaking upper 90s, touching 100. And it's kind of the mentality too with the changeup. Like you do not want to manipulate the ball. You're going to throw everything hard and just let the grip take care of it.
Yep, exactly.
What do you think? What do you attribute the smoothness of your delivery? Like you're very smooth, you're not herky jerky. You're kind of, it just looks like an effortless velocity to me when I'm watching you. It doesn't look like you're trying particularly hard or, it's kind of shocking actually when you see the ball come out of your hand that fast. Is that something that you've worked on, the smoothness of it? I think it's probably deceptive for a hitter seeing the ball jump out like that.
Yeah. So I was always college, minor leagues, first year in the big leagues, always had the big long windup. Um, and so the windup, it was constantly changing for me. I was at first, it was the straight on, step back, rock and throw kind of thing. Then I kind of went to the Marcus Stroman, where you start looks like a stretch and you kind of do a step, rock and go. Because I was always trying to minimize movement. I found that I wasn't very good at controlling my body once I got going in all kinds of different directions. So the progression was this big step back, big tall wind up to the kind of the Marcus Stroman step to the side, lift and go. And I got to the point I was like, why am I even doing this step and rock and go? Like, I don't need it. I'm not getting more velocity from it. So after 19, it's like, why do we have to take extra steps? Just be in the stretch, get your sign, come set, lift and go. And so the more I did that, the more I was able to kind of smooth things out, slow things down, realize where I got my power from. It wasn't having this real big, quick leg kick. That's not going to help me generate arm speed. It's just going to throw me off even more and not allow me to get my arm up. So it just over time, just kind of slowly got things to slow down, minimize movement, smooth things out. And, I realized that I'm gaining my power when the arm gets up. When the arm gets up and I'm hammering the ball is when, all this velocity is going to come. So I've been able to kind of smooth things out. Like I say, it may cause this extra form of deception of, hey, he's slow, smooth, and all of a sudden it's on you kind of thing.
Yeah. So take me through that. I said, when you start your one, when is go time for you in your mechanics? When do you feel like you're actually exerting effort? When do you know that you're moving right? Like, what are the key things in your mechanics?
Yeah. So I'm not trying to hammer the baseball until really the ball is out in front of my head. For me, I'm focusing on slow and smooth, get the arm up, and I'm not going to really hammer it until the ball is out front. For me, it's wait as long as I can and then really try to rip the seams off the baseball at the very last minute. For me, that helps me keep everything slow and relaxed and not tense up. When I have this real big, arm, hands lift and a leg lift, I start to cause this extra movement and I lose my posture, start to tense up in the shoulders. I don't get the arm up. So the arm is then down. And so it creates all these arm side misses. So for me, smooth is better. When I'm slow and smooth and really at the last minute trying to rip the seams off the baseball with the hand out front is when, everything works the best for me.
All right, so you're mostly thinking, you're not even thinking about your lower half. You haven't mentioned your lower half. You're thinking your arm, when it's up here, it's go time. But your lower half, has it always been kind of not something you focused on?
I focused on a little bit in the off season, as far as like stride length and that kind of thing. If you watch me in a bullpen, I'm stepping out my stride length. I know exactly where I want my foot to land. So I know that if I'm in a bullpen session, I look down and my stride length's not getting to where I want to be. It's, obviously I'm not getting to the back leg well enough to get down the mound. But when I'm on the mound, there's no thought of me in the lower half. I've been very good, really, since I started pitching, about being good in the lower half, sinking into that back leg and driving down. That it's kind of something that I won't check in on unless I feel like there's a reason to. For me, it's always been the issue with the arm slot, getting the hand out in front, that kind of thing. So part of my throwing progression when I'm warming up is kind of going in that wide lunge position and rocking back and throwing. I have my ball that I put in my front arm, my big yellow ball that I carry around with me. But that is obviously for the front side as well, but mostly to feel kind of this rock and getting into the legs. And then after I do that, it kind of goes out of the mind and it's more about where we are with the arm.
Who got you onto it's like a connection ball type thing, or one of those things that you just put, who was that something you picked up, or is that a coach picking it up for you?
That was with our pitching coach. A lot of guys will use it in their back arm. Right. You'll see for a lot of connection for the short arm stroke. He thought of it. I don't know if he thought of it or he saw a drill or something, but it was put in the front arm and it's keeping this front arm shorter, because I try to keep this my throwing arm short, so I'm trying to mirror this front arm to it. So when I got long, with the front side and short on the back side, I would start, pulling off and getting this big long front side. So we shortened it up, and by shortening it up, it helped keep everything kind of in line and kept me from pulling off. And so when I do it in catch play, it's, hey, everything's short here, everything's short and compact. We're getting over the top of this connection ball versus the arm flying open and coming around everything.
That makes a lot of sense, because it's always going to be equal and opposite. So if it has the butterfly effect of if you fix your glove side, it's going to fix your arm side, and you don't even have to worry about it. Like, right. Don't keep that out of your mind.
Yep.
What do you do for recovery? Like between starts or after a start? Are you an ice guy? Are you a Mark Pro guy? Are you a lifting guy? What do you do?
For me, I've kind of been different throughout my time pitching. Obviously in high school, that the craze was ice. Make sure you get ice on your shoulders. So I'd always ice. College, we iced. Once I got into pro ball and into the big leagues, ice was kind of gone away from things. There's a lot of science saying don't slow down the blood flow, increase the blood flow, Mark Pro, that kind of stuff. I'm a big guy to recover with nutrition. So as soon as I'm done, it's getting the right things in my body to help, promote good blood flow and basically decrease the amount of inflammation. So I don't really do a ton of the Mark Pro or the Normatec, that kind of thing. I kind of let the body flush itself with the nutrition I provide. The next day, moving around, getting the heart rate up, getting the blood flow pumping even more. I feel like the last 2 years I've done that. I've been stronger at the end of the year than I have been almost at the beginning of the year. The more I throw, the more I build the strength, the more I let my body, let itself recover by natural processes that, this year in September, I felt great.
So there are guys that sit there and say, obviously I mentioned Tristan McKenzie wanting to have your cutter. Is there a guy in the league that you're sitting there going, boy, if I could only throw that pitch, this would be awesome? There are guys who do you like watching pitch, and who would you borrow something from if you could?
That's a good one. If I could add Devin's changeup to my arsenal, that'd be great. If I could throw a left-handed fastball like Hader, that'd be great, coming at both sides. That'd be ideal. But yeah, so many guys have so many good pitches. Obviously, I'd love to throw 102 like DeGrom. If I could take his velocity and put it with my cutter, that'd be great. So I think it'd be more about gelling certain pitches together. But yeah, the one pitch I would directly go to would be Devin's changeup. It's tough to pick. There's so many good pitchers in the league. No one comes to mind to me with an absolutely phenomenal sinker, but there's plenty of guys out there. Like Hauser throws a great sinker. Other guys throw really good sinkers that I would love to throw that to my game, but then am I going to be too on my own head of trying to throw different pitches? So for me, I have the perfect blend of what I like to do and what I do the best.
So are you ever thinking like you're going to top like Class A's 102 mile an hour cutter?
I don't think I have that in the tank. That's like superhuman, fast twitch muscle. I don't know. I don't know if that's in the tank.
99's okay though. Like, so hitting wise, obviously that's going away. Do you lose anything from the game? Like some people, like when they hit off a pitcher, they're like, oh, wow, this is way tougher than I'd think. So maybe I could add this pitch, or maybe I won't give hitters that much credit, whatever it is. Number one is, does that change like future guys coming up, not having to hit? And number two, who's the toughest guy for you to hit off of? Like, who did you ever get up there and say, boy, this sucks, I ain't freaking doing this again?
Yeah. So to the first part, it's definitely going to be weird having a DH in the game. Obviously if it's agreed on, but it's going to be weird, because that's one of those things that it's like, oh, it's just a pitch in the box. Just stand up there and throw your cutter down the middle. It's like, well, I don't try to throw my cutter down the middle. So it puts you in this unfamiliar territory of, when I'm up there, I'm trying to throw cutters on the black. So if you get up there, you're throwing cutters on the black, the pitcher's going to take it. Like, you don't know if it's a flip of the coin back with the umpire if he's going to call it. So it's tough for me to just say, hey, it's a pitcher in the box, just go after him. So that's one of those things that's kind of underrated as far as people might see on the outside of it, of how'd the pitcher get a hit, or how do you walk the pitcher? Like these guys are still athletes up at the plate. There's plenty of guys out there putting good ABs together. It's also going to be, obviously different strategy, like game planning. When you get down to 7, 8 in the order and you got an open base, you might pitch around the 8-hole hitter to get to the pitcher. So it's definitely going to be a little bit less strategic moves going on. It's going to be like, hey, the 9-hole hitter could be, the center fielder that rakes. So it kind of depends on the lineup, obviously who it is, but you don't have that one. Most people like to say the sure out in the lineup. As far as the pitching stand, personally, I loved hitting, but yeah, like you say, I don't have to go in there and face a guy throwing 100 now. A lot less guys that are going to get hurt swinging a bat, running to first, running second to home, trying to slide, that kind of thing. Luckily I didn't have to slide last year, but I don't know, couldn't tell you the last time I had a slide on the base pass. So that probably could have gotten ugly. And then as far as getting in the box, I did face DeGrom this year. But gosh, I'm trying to think of the toughest AB I had to face. I guess it's a combination of things. Because you don't see DeGrom's slider out of his hand. It looks like a fastball. Then when you face Wainwright, he throws this big over 12.6, 72 mile-an-hour curveball that all of a sudden it's like, where'd that thing come out of? So, I'd like to say I'm lucky that I got to face some of the best pitchers in the game, but then also unlucky because you used to have to face the best pitchers in the game. So, but yeah, it's definitely a part of the game I think I'll miss, but probably get better that it's not going to be there.
What's it like facing DeGrom other than that slider? Like, does the ball seem like it jumps on you? What stands out to you about him?
It does feel like it jumps. I would think it's probably similar to facing like Freddie Peralta. These guys, they have huge long arms, so they're releasing the ball. You can reach out and grab it as he's throwing it out of his hand. Like I think that's the biggest thing with facing some of those guys that he also throws 100 and throws a slider at 95. So that helps. But having that huge long wingspan and a long length down the mound and the release point of releasing it 3 to 4 feet closer, maybe at times than some guys on the mound, definitely takes 100 and makes it play probably like 105.
Do you feel like you're ready to you've been keeping obviously in shape, working on stuff? You can ramp up. It's not going to be, what I always worry about having this long off period where you're, is just having downtime and then having to ramp up and jump into a season. But it sounds like you've been you're a pro. You're going to be in condition and ready to go. Is there ever a worry about stuff like that?
I don't think so. There's so many facilities, anywhere you look, there's places to work out, there's places to throw, there's places to get your work in. Everyone I've talked to, everyone I've seen, I'm fortunate to live in Arizona, so I have good weather. I can get outside year round. But even guys that are in the Midwest that have been snowed in, like guys are still able to go to facilities and throw and work out. So, we're ready to play. That's not going to be the issue. When this thing gets kicked off, it's more about when's it going to get kicked off. So I think, if I've built up and ramped up like I have every other offseason. If typically we would have reported Wednesday or Thursday, I think last week they said. So would be getting into live hitters, like we're setting up live hitters to throw, like we're ready to go. So when season does start, spring training might be 2.5 weeks shorter than it typically would be, but we're going to be ready to go and hit the ground running whenever we're told to get there.
Are you a baseball fan or a guy that is it just something you're good at? Is it something you've like always been a fan of, that it's almost surreal playing? Like, where do you fit on that? And what's your favorite baseball movie? Let's find a little bit out.
Yeah, so I've always been a baseball fan. I've watched baseball since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. Right? My wife always wants to watch Disney movies, and then when they do a remake of a Disney movie, I'm like, what movie is that? I didn't watch Disney growing up. She's like, are you crazy? It's like, no, I had Sports Center on. I had Baseball Tonight on. That's what I did as a kid. I watched sports. I watched baseball. So definitely, a fan of baseball, have been since I've grown up. I love playing the game. I love the game. So it's really cool to the little kid in me look back and be like, hey, I'm a big leaguer in the big league. So I have a son that's going to be born in probably 2.5 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And it's going to be really cool to tell him that, hey, like I'm a big leaguer now. He might, by the time I'm done playing is when he starts to love the game, but he'd be like, no, I can show videos. I can show you, PitchingNinja videos. Look, he's got me on there. So, definitely a fan of the game and love the game. And as far as my favorite baseball movie, I always loved The Sandlot. The Major League movies are good as well. Especially now that knowing Bob Uecker and getting to talk to him and watch him in the movie. Same guy in the movie, same guy now. He's hilarious, but definitely The Sandlot.
What would you advise your kid? Would you want him to play baseball? Do you care? Do you want him to find his own route? What would you pass down if he wanted to play baseball? What would you tell him?
Yeah, I am not going to push him to play baseball. He can do whatever he wants to do. Hopefully he plays golf and then I can go play golf whenever I want. That's ideal. But I think him probably going to spend hopefully the next 7, 8, 9 years, however long I end up playing in the big leagues. He's going to grow up around the game. He's probably going to learn to love the game like I did. So chances are he's going to play baseball. I'm not going to be the dad to, force it on him and, hey, go out and practice. If he wants to do it, great. If he doesn't, then he just doesn't have the love and the drive for it like I had. So if he gets to the point that he asks that, hey, can we go out in the backyard and, teach me how to throw a cutter, then I'm going to try. I'll do my best. But there's not going to be anything, pushing him in one direction. If he wants to play the game, great. And then, I'll do my best to teach him it.
Yeah. Robbie Ray told me that I guess his kid, whenever he drops him off at school, he's like, my dad is a pitcher in the major leagues. He's like, because I was wondering if you get embarrassed, you don't want your dad around. Instead, he's like, oh no, my dad is a badass, which is kind of cool. That's awesome.
Hopefully I'm his favorite player. I've heard a lot of, growing up, you're coming in the minor league or the big leagues at a young age. I've seen a lot of guys with their kids in the clubhouse, and some of my favorite stories are guys being like, "Oh, who's your favorite baseball player?" Thinking they'd say their dad. No, Christian Yelich, because he just won the MVP. Is like, that's tough, Dad. Like, sorry about that, but hopefully at one point I'm his favorite player.
Can you top what you did, or what is your mindset going into a new season? Is it to be better than you were last year? Is it to stay at the same level and just keep that same focus and not it's going to be very hard to be better. You can be, obviously, because you gave up a run, or two. What is the mindset that you have? Because looking back, and I'm just, the 10 strikeouts in a game, a no-hitter, a Cy Young award, the most strikeouts to start a season without a walk. It's a historic season. How do you possibly, what do you think going in?
So part of the biggest part of my game that I worked on, and I think it's no secret, was the mental side of it. Part of what I got caught up in 19 as a starter was being results oriented. What was my ERA? How many strikeouts? What am I doing? So part of the biggest thing I worked on was taking the results side of the game out of it for me. My biggest thing is preparation. I get on the mound, I have fun. So this, I get that question a lot is, how are you going to top last year? For me personally, I think I have a lot of room to grow. I made 27 or 28 starts last year. I'm looking to make 30 plus this year. I'm not going to be like, hey, I'm trying to get, 2.2 ERA. I'm trying to strike out 400 guys. That's the results side of it or out of it for me. For me personally, I want to prepare better this year than I did last year. I feel like there was still I did a great job of preparation, but I think there were still some starts that I could have been better prepared for. Game planning. I want to work on, tweak some stuff, game planning. So for me, it's about the stuff I do off the field to better prepare myself on the field. There were still some times last year that I kind of got into this, maybe had a bad inning or something. I kind of feel myself start to dig a hole. Like, no, I want to be better. When the inning's over, it's over. You're out there, you're having fun. So for me, I think I still have a lot of room to grow, personally, mentally on the baseball side of it, to be an even better pitcher. Obviously, my main goal every single year is to come out of the year healthy, pitch a full year healthy. This year, it might be more innings. It might be more starts. It might be, it might lead to more strikeouts. It might be less strikeouts. I don't know what the numbers are going to look like at the end of the year, but for me, I think I still have a lot of personal, room to grow as far as the things I can control.
How do you evaluate a start, and what was your best start last year?
So I evaluate starts based off pitch execution. One of the things I focus on is, hey, I know that I'm throwing the right pitch at the right time. It's about how I executed the pitch. So the day after my start, we have everything, technology now, everything is on video. So I'm able to go break down my last game, my 90-something pitches in 10 minutes. And I basically just track how well my execution percentage was. If it's an 0-0 cutter, I'm trying to get it to the outer third of the plate. If it's an 0-2 cutter, I'm trying to, hit it this specific spot down there. So how I evaluate each pitch execution wise, there's wider ranges. And so, ideally I'm looking for my number after going into the season. I wanted to be like 76, 77% execution on a nightly basis. I learned after last year that I was about 79% execution rate. So for my goal every start was try to be about 78%. My best start last year was the Cubs start, the 10 strikeouts in a row. I think my execution percentage was about 83%. So I was anywhere from 75 to 83% last year. So the lower games were the 74. So I think I had 174, 74, 75% execution. And then the top was the 83, the 10 strikeout game. Ironically, the no-hitter was on the bottom end of what I would consider my execution percentage.
Interesting, because I think that way of evaluating your start is consistent with the mentality of one pitch at a time. Like you're executing a pitch. You don't care about the result. Even if the result's bad, it doesn't matter. If you executed the pitch, you can't do any better than that. Exactly. Is that where that came from?
Yep. Yeah. And I gave up 7 home runs last year, and 4 of the pitches were actually where we wanted to go. Execution wise, we hit the spot. We did what we wanted to do. I just didn't do a good job, enough preparation, knowing the right sequence, or it was just the guy's second or third AB, and we try to do the same thing over again. And they just said, hey, he's doing this. So they can jump to it. So, that was obviously one of the most things I was proud of, was how I was able to not get too results oriented. It was one pitch at a time, cutter down and away, go execute the cutter down the way type of thing.
So you were responsible also for probably the most uncomfortable game that I've watched, because I had to go to the bathroom watching you versus Barrios early in the season last year. And I couldn't leave because both of you guys were throwing video game stuff. And it was one of those things where I'm sitting here, doing what I do, and I couldn't get up. Did it feel like that when you were battling? Do you ever look at the other guy and say, this is great? Like he has his best stuff going. I have my best stuff going. We're competing, or are you competing against the lineup? Does you ever take a step back and say, boy, that's fun?
Yes. I mean, I knew in the moment that, Jose was having a great game. And it was more visually, I don't watch when another guy's throwing. Usually I'm down in the tunnel, taking my breather, going through my meditation type stuff to get ready for the next inning. But I could hear it when guys would come in, after 2 outs, I come back to the bench that I got to, to kind of lock it in. You could hear it when a guy comes in and be like, I didn't see that slider. I didn't see that, sink or whatever. Yeah. So, I just knew based off that he was having a great game. Obviously the score was still 0-0. But yeah, I don't get too focused in on what's going on, what other guys are doing after the game. When I'm done, I just threw 6 innings or whatever. I go in and like, damn, he's still in the game. Like he's having a good game, that kind of thing. That's when I'll kind of take a step back and look at it. But when I'm in it, I don't really know what's going on our end offensively side of it. As I'm in, doing preparation and breathing techniques and kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Last question. What type of music do you listen to? What type of stuff? Like you get pumped up with stuff, or chill? Do you listen to stuff that's more chill? What do you do?
I'm all country music. So it's, I like the 90s.
Old school or music. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So the 80s and 90s, I grew up obviously in the 90s. So that's kind of the country music I was used to. My parents listened to it, grandparents listened to it. So that's what I listen to. It's funny. You go in the weight room and, you put country music on and I'll be getting loose for the game. And the strength coach will be like, is that too slow? I'm like, no, that's great. Like, I don't need this high, blaring, upbeat type of music. Part of my meditation before the game, I do it basically, it's about 15 to 20 minutes. And I do it right before I go out on the field. And sometimes I'll be sitting there almost like dozing off. Like I'm deep in thought. I'm, slowed down the breathing. Like I could fall asleep right then. And then it ends and I'm like, all right, let's go out at the field. Like, it's just calm, relaxed. I try not to get all this extra adrenaline, extra heart rate going, because I know that once I get on the mound, like, you're going to get plenty of adrenaline going.
Yeah, that seems consistent with the way I view you from the outside, is kind of that low heartbeat stuff. And the hair flip K strut thing that you do, is that where did that, do you even know that you're doing that? Like, after it's a big pitch and you're just going back there like that?
I don't. It's the strut. I have no idea. The hair, I'm getting out of my face because it bugs the shit out of me that it's getting all in my face and all in my mouth. And I'm at the point now. It's like, I can't cut the hair, even though it drives me crazy and gets in my face. And I always got to wear it like this, wear it up, or wear a hat, because you can't just wear it down. So if I could cut it and keep it short like it used to be, that'd be great. But I'm kind of at the point now that I think I'm stuck with the long hair for a while.
It's one of those things, though, like, it's a unique thing to you. I think maybe Thor did that a couple of times, but I noticed that all the time. Like a big K, and you're going back, they're going like that. And I think it's kind of badass. Like, keep it going. It's good.
It's usually because it's sweaty and it's stuck to my neck, so I'm trying to get it out of the way.
Awesome. Well, hey, we'll wrap it up. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to, hopefully, everybody watching this. Everybody learned something. And it's been great. And have an awesome year. Like, tear it up. Again, I love watching all your starts. It is one of my favorite things to do. I drop everything every time you pitch. Not putting any pressure on you, but no, it's fantastic. It's great talking to you about all this.
I appreciate it. No, thanks. And thanks for having me on.